18 hours and 45 minutes. 18 hours, 45 minutes. And we're at over 100,000 live listeners right now, millions so far, and we've seen little to no glitches whatsoever. So I just want to, give a shout out to the team, making sure Spaces is working well and allowing us to cover this. Now, the updates from TASS. A criminal case was opened against Prigozhin under Article 275 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation on organizing an armed rebellion. In Moscow, the Moscow and Voronezh regions, a counter-terrorist operation regime was introduced. Follow the main events in our online broadcast. So everything, they're just recapping here. There's nothing new. Vladimir Putin addressed the Russians in connection with an attempted armed rebellion by Wagner. In the Voronezh region, during a fire at an oil depot, depressurization of two tanks occurred. June 26 will be a non-working day in Moscow. No shit. The Russian Defense Ministry announced the destruction of the Ukrainian warehouse with Storm Shadow missiles, seeing attacks on Ukrainian territory. But another interesting thing, Ian, remember when the mutiny or the coup first started, we saw strikes on Ukraine. We're like, oh, it seems nothing too serious because they're still striking Ukraine. Then we had some military experts say, no, look, Mario, these strikes are usually planned in advance. So we're just seeing a
strike back.
Exactly.
They plan out days in advance. Sometimes,
Yeah. Exactly. So we saw a continuation of pre-planned strikes, but then since then there hasn't been any strikes on Ukrainian territory. At least nothing has been reported. Putin signed a law on fines and arrest for violating martial law. So there's your point, Suleiman. You said why are they not allowing? Why are they saying telling people not to have events? Well, there's a martial law being implemented. Some schools will have a mine risk education. Wow, I didn't see that. Some schools will have a mine risk education program. Also, the Telegram channel Fighter Bomber, allegedly linked to the Russian Ministry of Defense, claims that the Russian military lost 6 helicopters and 1 plane during the confrontation with Wagner to date. So just some more updates here. All source, I'll bring you back up. I know you're glitching. Let's go to Piotr and then Alex.
Yeah, thanks, Mario. So just I wanted to bring a couple of diplomatic updates. I've been in touch with a few of my colleagues who work in the space on that area, and you mentioned it earlier. I think that the US has already had some behind door or what we call backdoor diplomacy meetings with the British, the French, Germans. But what I'm very interested to point out to everyone is how few countries have publicly come to the support of the Kremlin. Right? We've had the Islamic Republic, a pretty broad statement. Turkey's explicitly said that they will support Putin, but that's because Putin was very supportive of Erdogan in the election in Turkey a month ago. So it shows you how you scratch back, I'll scratch yours. China and India, the two main countries that I am watching as a geopolitical person to see how they respond. I think the Chinese are going to be pretty shocked about as much as we all are about what's happening. And I'm going to be very curious to see if they do release a public statement, how it's going to be phrased. Because at the end of the day, President Xi is a pragmatist. He's going to want a Russia that is on the side of the Chinese, but equally, he's got quite a good relationship with Putin personally. And when it comes to autocracies, the personal relations of the leaders are as important as the state as a whole. So I recommend everybody to keep in mind those
Piotr,
main
two questions. Piotr, two questions. I know we saw some movements around Taiwan. I've got 2 questions for you. First, there hasn't been anything coming out of the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, regarding the movements in Russia, unless I missed something, Piotr, if you've got something there. Also, this is, let me know if you agree, Piotr, this is good news for Taiwan, because China just witnessed the collapse of the Russian government due to their
that's
war in
collapse
Ukraine.
Of the Russian government.
So, Mario, actually, on the China thing,
potential,
if I may, just on the China thing, because I think this is an important conversation. We are starting to see the first indication of Chinese media and how they're portraying this. Again, some of them is from state media. We're not getting anything specifically, but they're basically comparing this to kind of historical examples where the Chinese, back then in the Qing Dynasty was unable to maintain control. And some of them are actually becoming critical, and Chinese state media critical of Putin, blaming Putin basically for neglecting Wagner and causing the situation. So we're starting to see the initial, at least from Chinese state media, criticization of Putin, but nothing yet officially from the Chinese government.
So we're seeing what I've seen, and that's based on the various statements. We saw that Kazakhstan, Belarus to a lesser extent, but Turkey, Kazakhstan, and now we saw that in China to an extent.
But I just shared a tweet in the next, Mario, from the Wall Street Journal, which came out about an hour ago, stating that it's getting quite surprisingly low coverage. So you've got the main state media paper called the Global Times. They've hardly mentioned it, not a dicky bird. The South Chinese Morning Post, which is a more of a Taiwan-focused, a slightly freer paper, has mentioned it a little bit. But no, China remaining quite quiet on this. And I think it's because they, like, the US and other monitoring the situation. They don't want to make any too quick knee-jerk statements and get it wrong. If the Chinese say something too soon, that could either play into the hands of Prigozhin or gave too much confidence to the Russian government when they need to be focusing on it. I don't think the Chinese would support Prigozhin, but equally, I think this will severely, I think, dent the long-standing relationship between Russia and China, because Russia has been the steadfast secondary partner in China's desire to usurp the Western-led political order. So quite quiet on that. Modi's just come back from the US. I don't think Modi's going to get involved, to be honest with you. So, but what I am interested in is the Middle Eastern states, right? The Gulf states, pretty quiet. African states, pretty quiet. Uganda said they'd come out and send their forces if the Russians need them, which is quite bizarre. So.
Russian channels are reporting that Ukrainian units have crossed the Dnipro River.
Correct.
And fights are
Correct.
ongoing, neither destroyed Antonivsky Bridge. The enemy has already transferred 3 tanks with the help of a ferry. Repeat, the Ukrainian forces have crossed the Dnipro River.
And that's in Kherson. So that's remember when they blew up the dam?
And more reports. Okay, we got some good news. Some good news. There's sporadic reports. I'm trying to get the source on Russian Telegram channels of negotiations ongoing between the Wagner Group and Russian authorities. Now, when we say Telegram channels, they're not random Telegram channels. There's a few Telegram channels that are trusted in the OSINT community. Also, do you want to give us a 10-second overview of these Telegram channels that you and your other people in your community?
Wagner, Russia has a plethora of Telegram channels that cover everything from Russia to Ukraine. Some of them are more reliable, some are not. But you always have to take everything that what is said with a grain of salt. And I would be very careful of these conversations and negotiation for Russian Telegram channel. This could be an attempt to try to portray the situation as calmer as it is, because we see tensions are very high in Rostov-on-Don right now, and also in Moscow. So I think we just need to see if there's any.
But remember, you did say, okay, so Turkish foreign minister is discussing the situation in Russia with Blinken. Things are moving extremely fast. You did say that the Russian convoy may have stopped, according to some reports, may have stopped moving. Yeah, it may have stalled. Again, another way to speculate is that could be due to the negotiations that are ongoing.
That would be very
okay, so
Lyubov with the commanders on the ground, not just
there's also reports, again, in Telegram. We don't know what's true and which is just psyop and information warfare, but there's other reports that Wagner already has a presence in Moscow, like kind of like sleeper cells, and they're waiting for Wagner to arrive to activate. Again, this is the problem when you're trying to disseminate information in a breaking environment, and what is true and what is false, what is fake news, information warfare, where it's actually legitimate information. There's so much information out there that's really hard to pinpoint exactly what's going on.
Okay, so I've got some more information here coming in. So we've got Lyubov Sobol, who's a Russian political and public figure. Can you talk about her, please? Also, do you know much about Ms. Sobol?
I think
before I read the piece.
Isn't she the head of the RT? Correct? If I'm not mistaken, I might be mixing up people right now.
Let me check. She is a member of the Russian Opposition Coordination Council and the producer of the YouTube channel Navalny.
Oh, no, I do not. Okay, no.
So I think she's opposing. So Sobol is a well-known figure of the Russian opposition movement. So she said the following: urged to, it's pretty extreme, extinguish Putin, taking advantage of Prigozhin's rebellion. She turned to adult men with resources. Extinguish Putin right now. Hand him over to The Hague, where he will be dealt with humanely.
Where is she located?
Siloviki, FSB, I'll let you check. Investigative committee, prosecutor's office, all do not follow criminal orders. Sabotage, strike, eggs. I'm guessing she's not located
Yeah, I'm guessing she's not. No.
in Russia. Prigozhin now has titanium eggs, and you find your own. Okay, so it's just very anti-Putin. There's not much there, not much substance. Someone that hates Putin. Okay, so the dollar in some exchanges in Moscow, according to Moldova Libera, is already being sold for 200 rubles. How much is the dollar in rubles, according to the exchange?
Did you say 200 rubles for a dollar?
Okay, yeah, it's 84 rubles. Well, according to Moldova Libera, in some exchanges in Moscow, it's being traded for 200 rubles.
Jesus,
There's so many things happening.
We're not able to.
I don't have. Look, guys, I don't have enough team members to verify the speed in which all this is coming, especially not on a weekend. But I'm just reading out and saying where it's coming from. Also, you're trying to help, trying your best to help. So the team said in the chats of Belgorod, calls for some kind of flash bomb in support of PMC Wagner began to spread. We're just seeing a lot of ribbons, just some sort of movement to spread in support of Wagner, which is just a red ribbon around the wrist. So just nothing too exciting. I do want to go back to the panel.
Actually, that's key, Mario. That's actually very important because that's important that red might be an identifier, right? Because one of the issues we run into is how do you identify? So it's Wagner, and that's actually masked because earlier yesterday or a couple hours ago when the first images came out in Rostov, what we saw were the tanks were all marked red. A lot of the vehicles were marked red. We also saw the white wristband, but we also saw red. This could be an indication of now when we start seeing videos, has Wagner utilized a red wrist, armband in the red color to identify who they are? And if that is confirmed, then it's easier for us to track which are Russian military events and which are Wagner. So that's an important information. Again, it's unconfirmed but important.
All right. All right, I'm going to go to the panel just to give the team members a bit more time to verify all the information. We've literally got like 8 people verifying the news right now, and there's just too much coming on. So let's just give us some time. Colonel, I'll love you to give us your thoughts on what we've read so far.
Yeah, so Mario, it's interesting that you talk about the potential for a negotiation, and I realize that there's excitement about that, but I have to be honest, if I was in Putin's shoes, I'd probably do the same thing. What a negotiation does is it buys you time. And the one thing this thing's moving so fast, he wants to try and slow it down. He wants to try and get his, the Chechen forces more in place. He'd like to get to that air tasking order cycle that I said, it's going to take a couple hours to get airplanes in the air where you're really going to start flying them. So the idea of a negotiation is not a bad tactic on Putin's
But Colonel, isn't that another error by Putin? Should he have not done that so rather than go so aggressive in his speech earlier this morning, should he have done a more tamer speech, try to negotiate, and then when he's got his forces in place, then try and take Prigozhin out? Like, even that, do you think that was a misstep based on...
I disagree with that.
Situation about negotiations is right. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I would disagree with that, assessment, because I think that, you have multiple commanders on the ground who work for Wagner, obviously, that they may be negotiating with, and perhaps, the strike on the convoy earlier that we saw, a number of Wagner vehicles taken out by Russian forces. That was like a warning strike. It's like, hey, we'll do more of this. We'll blow up more of your guys unless you start talking to us. And that could possibly be the situation where they dealt a warning blow. And now, it's like, okay, let's have a conversation. You don't have to die with Prigozhin,
No, I think I disagree. I think Suleiman's right, and I'll tell you why I think he's right. When Prigozhin came out, he literally gave Putin a pass. Right, he said that Putin was not being informed by his Minister of Defense and his Chief of Defense on what was going on. They were withholding evidence from the president, and that was a pass. And Suleiman, I'm with you. I dropped my jaw when that speech was that bold. I really thought there was a chance where Gerasimov and Shoigu were just going to be kicked to the curb, and that there was a potential that Russia could reunify itself with somehow Prigozhin being in some leadership position in the Ministry of Defense. That speech was so polarizing. As soon as Prigozhin heard it, his hands were tied. There was no other choice now.
But I just have to go back to there's just no way for I just can't see if Putin kicks Gerasimov and Shoigu out because he's forced by Prigozhin. Shoigu and Gerasimov are only in power because of Putin. If he kicks them out because of Prigozhin's threat, then Prigozhin's in charge, even if Putin's president. That's it.
Exactly.
He can't do it.
No. Also, so I agree with that. There was any other form of speech he did would have shown some form of immediate weakness. I'm saying if he gave this veneer of basically kowtowing to Prigozhin, and then you put yourself in a situation where you can put your forces in place. You can even try and get Prigozhin arrested. But you can make a number of moves. Now what's happened is he's gone in hard, and it looks like, based on what everybody's saying, we haven't even got the back. He hasn't even got the backup in terms of in Moscow to even have some kind of decent.
Well,
And
that would
Suleiman,
be show
we're getting like
weakness, right?
surreal
He
footage
can't
right now.
do
We're
that.
getting
He has to deal with traitors.
Hold on, guys. Everyone,
No,
hold
I
on.
just want to
This
share
also,
this.
so this
For
is breaking news.
example,
Just mute.
there's
Go ahead.
videos coming out right now of Wagner forces freely willy walking into stores in Rosanov, just buying supplies, like just like they're just in stores buying whatever material they want, food, etc. And I think it's clear as day right now. If there's any doubt, and I think there wasn't at this point, but Rosanov is 100%, no doubt, under Wagner control. It is the base of operation for Wagner for this coup attempt against Putin or this military rebellion. And Rosanov is the center of operations right now. They have absolute control. The videos coming out from that area clearly show it. Sorry, go ahead, Ian.
I was saying that he can't show weakness, and he also has to keep in mind that he represents the Russian people, and what this represents, right? The Wagner's insurrection. It's a betrayal of the Russian people. It's not just a betrayal of Putin; it's a betrayal of the Russian people because they have gone against everything that they stand for. I mean, they're supposed to stand for Russia, and here they are, fighting against Russians. So for him to show weakness, for him to say, "Hey, you guys are cool. I'm going to kick out Gerasimov and Sorokin," like that would be unfathomable because like no one appointed Prigozhin as this military leader to do what he's doing right now. Right? He doesn't have any official sanction anywhere, like or official
Well,
or
Ian, he does
unofficial.
have one big support, though, which is the Russian mums, right? Russian mums are an infamous, if you cast your minds back a few months, Putin was filmed sitting down with a bunch of Russian mothers to talk about the losses of boys and young men in body bags that were coming back from the Russian front lines in a very televised, Russian typical propagandist bit.
A local resistance around Moscow. So there's mines being placed by the Russian military to slow down the advancement of Wagner's forces, and the security forces drove a lot of trucks to the place, blocked the roads, and helicopters fly near the Krutishki airfield. So just some more updates. U.S. official says top U.S. general spoke to the Ukrainian counterparts. Nothing special there.
So Ian, can I ask you a question? I don't disagree that Putin always has to look strong. But how is it not a strong speech that he comes out, he stands behind the podium, he looks extremely angry, and he says, I just learned from Prigozhin, I had a discussion with him. He is 100% correct that Gerasimov and Shoigu have been lying to me, and I am furious with them. I'm putting out a criminal, I'm filing them that they are now criminals of the state. I am bringing Prigozhin in here to learn more about some of the information that he's had. Our nation has been completely upended by these two individuals who I no longer declare to be Russians. It is absolutely unbelievable that they have destroyed us.
It would be a lie.
Well, dude, the guy tells lies all the time.
No. There's literally so blatant a lie that no one would buy it. It's ridiculous. Like he's not going to throw his own generals under the bus.
Little green men. Little green men was a ridiculous lie. No one in the world believed that.
Okay,
either.
Little green man, whatever.
Months, a year later, he laughed about it.
You're trying to make like Putin's just going to blatantly lie to the public and say that the people that he commanded, that he ordered to like the people directly under his control have been lying to him. So how stupid is this guy? No, he's not going to do that. That's ridiculous. No way.
He's going to look weak in front of the army. That's the problem he has, which is why he's deploying Chechen troops. And the reason why Wagner has probably stopped entering or moving at pace into Moscow is because of the rumors of Chechen forces deployed there that are faithful to Putin. Prigozhin and Wagner probably thought, like, their trip to Moscow, that army units were just going to roll in behind them, because it's obvious that general soldiers, those that are fighting, they identify with him, and are seem to be more loyal to him than they are to Putin. So again, I come back to this piece about Roston on Don, which is where this is where he will be stopped. This is where Putin can seize back control. If he loses that, then all he can do is buy time before more of the army units get behind Prigozhin and Wagner, and obviously the Chechen forces, which I think only number about 10,000, become overwhelmed.
Go ahead, Alex, and then Elijah. Elijah, you've been waiting for a while. Maybe go Elijah first, just for balance, and then we'll go to Alex.
No problem. Yeah, it is interesting, some of the language that's been used by some of the speakers here that show sort of an already slanted bias towards Putin, which I understand many Westerners have, calling this an invasion, using the phrase from the start of the invasion, or, the accusations of lies. I mean, we're talking about geopolitics, where if you could point to me a leader that doesn't work in some frame of deception or dishonesty, then I would say that you're probably not pointing me to a leader, because that's what they do, right? They work with information war. But with what's happening here, I mean, you cannot tell me by any means that Putin would be so ill-informed and so cut off from his top advisors that he wouldn't have some understanding of what was about to occur. And, even if we're talking about, it's in the moment, a 12, 24-hour warning, I mean, even deploying these foreign-based mercs in response already sets a barrier of separation. Like I mentioned, he calls this a special military operation. And while many people, like to say he's evil for that, then you'd have to stand against the United States government, which has waged many special military operations in the last several decades. Putin's goal is not to wipe out fellow Russians. His goal is not to wage war with fellow Russians. His war is with it's not with anyone. It's the securing of his own statehood in his country. And so, when there's a variable that's thrown in like this, especially when we're going by like 6-second TikTok clips and tweets from unverified accounts, and much of which even is from Russian state TV, which you can't believe, state media in general. To tell the truth, especially in America or with Russia, we're kind of like trying to draw on conclusions, and we kind of sound foolish, because really, Putin is not acting for very clear and obvious reasons, right? This is not part of his mission. He's been very clear and led us operatives in operation of what he's trying to accomplish, and it's not to go to war with mercenaries of Russian descent or Russian cooperation. And so, delaying conflict is going to be the number one goal, and he's going to try to continue his operation or special operation in Ukraine. And he's continued to want to end this war. Russia wants to end this war. Putin wants the war to stop. It's the West that wants it to continue. So it's not like he then wants to export the war further onto domestic soil and continue to wage it specifically in the capital. And so, like, this idea, I'll end here, of just constantly predicting that Putin is just this genocidal, insane leader that's much different than any of these other leaders in NATO or in the United States in general, is just absurd, because realistically he's been clear on his objectives, and we have to take a leader at their word unless he's shown differently, and he hasn't, and this doesn't show any difference. So I don't think he's going to act and just start killing his own people unless he's exhausted every other resource, or else he defeats his entire initial purpose.
Yeah, but nobody disagrees with what you're saying. That's exactly what everybody's been saying. We've said throughout this space that he has
Colonel
been
might
quite.
disagree. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that Putin basically has been careful to ensure that no lives are lost. Even we talked about Ukraine and talked about how he is a lot more moderate when it comes to Ukraine compared to if Prigozhin was to take over. In addition to that, yes, what we've been doing on the spaces, there's been some level of speculation that there will be in this scenario, but we've been reporting what the news we've got. We've told when it's unverified and when it's verified, and more importantly, we've talked about the various angles that this basically coup can take. And what has happened is, even though I've been pushing back, I've been surprised that Wagner's even got far to the Moscow city. So even those people who were making the argument that he would get to Moscow, there's been no resistance. Now we don't know the reason why there's not been any resistance. So then one speculates what are the reasons for it. So there is various angles from this, and so we're going into that. But Patrick, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
And Patrick, just before you go, I do want to get some reports. If anyone, Piotr, I know you've got sources on the ground. Lev spoke to his sources on the ground.
Mario, apparently it's kind of confusing because now they're claiming that certain bridges that are not in the vicinity of where Wagner was advancing where Wagner was advancing to Moscow, that Russian air forces are blowing up bridges. So, and there's videos of it, but it's hard to really specify if it's true or not, because that same video that was published claiming of blowing up bridges was also another account was claiming that was a Russian helicopter shot down. Again, guys, this is all just very hard to confirm, but I'll try to look more into that, Mario.
I appreciate it. Patrick, I'll let you give us your thoughts. In the meantime, we do want some reports, especially from anyone on the ground. We will be getting, we have limited internet connections in many parts of Russia, many parts of Moscow. That was even reported by Russian media. So it's been hard to get some information, and some information has been slow as well. But Patrick, would love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, just this notion that, Putin is fully informed and he knows what he's doing. This is the guy who sent in 8 mutually unsupported thrusts into Ukraine and dropped airborne over the capital because he believed they wouldn't fight without first suppressing air defenses. This guy's been a victim either of his own hubris or of what he's been told since day one. There's no reason to think he hasn't pushed his own people much further than they were willing to go, because he thought they would keep following orders.
I mean, Prigozhin or Putin? You lost me. Prigozhin or Putin, dude?
Putin. Putin has led his own people into a slaughterhouse, and frankly, it seems to me that they're fed up with it. I mean, that's Prigozhin's rap. He sounds like, disgruntled Tsarist soldiers from 1917, for God's sake.
Yeah, I know this. I know this doesn't play well, but I agree with Patrick. Right? I've watched Prigozhin for the last 6 months, and look, I'm no one's going to claim that I'm supportive of Russia, but I'll tell you, he comes far closer to obeying the laws of armed conflict and the Geneva Convention than the Russian forces.
He's a freedom fighter now. Is this how we're going to paint this narrative?
No, hold on. No, that's not what I'm saying. Listen to me, Ian. Jesus Christ, man. What I'm saying is he actually did prisoner swaps.
Colonel, can I just provide some news?
Ahead.
Sorry, let me just, and then I'll push it to you. I just wanted to provide something. I think this is also important. So President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, said the following, quote, "Today the world saw that the masters of Russia do not control anything, nothing at all, just complete chaos. The world should not be afraid. We know what protects us, only our unity." And then we got videos of large numbers of trucks going to block roads to Moscow. It's kind of like dump trucks and fire trucks, it looks like, or dump trucks and garbage trucks going down there. It's a significantly large convoy. And then also the president of Kazakhstan will hold an unscheduled meeting of the Security Council tomorrow. We'll hear reports from law enforcement agencies on the situation in Russia. Okay, go ahead, Colonel. Sorry.
Thanks. He buried his forces with honors and dignity. I mean, there's pictures all over the place of his forces being buried and taken care of. He's accounted for his people correctly. He's actually paying off family members of those that are deceased in contracts that he had made with them. So it's not about being a freedom fighter. What I'm saying is there's a lot of soldiers on the Russian side like, hey, that dude gets it, man. If I die here, I want someone to take care of my family. If I die here, I want to be buried with military honors because I fought for my country. If I get captured by the enemy, I want to make sure that someone's going to freaking try and get me back, and that I'm going to be taken care of, and that they're taking care of those guys, they're prisoners, because I don't want to be fucking beaten to shit when I'm in jail.
So I just want to, also, if you could do me a favor, can you give us a recap? We forgot to do it for the last couple of hours. A recap of everything we know so far. We'll do it like maybe 4 to 5 minutes this time, just because it's been so long. In the meantime, we do have our team looking at if anyone's on the ground in Russia. We do want to hear from you. If you're talking to people, we've got sources there. Please DM me. The team is checking DMs. Please include sources. We'll need to verify everything. We'll bring you up on stage, especially anyone in Russia that does have internet connection. In the meantime, also, I'd love you to give us just a quick overview on how things are going, and then we'll continue the discussion. Go ahead.
Hey, Mario.
Go ahead, Elijah. Just quickly. Unmute. You got to unmute. Elijah, you got to quickly unmute before also goes on.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to say real quickly, it's 3 o'clock here in Australia.
Yeah, all good. Anyway, all good. I appreciate it, Elijah.
Me on.
I appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for jumping on. You're welcome anytime. Also, would love the update, please, sir. The mic is yours, also. Can you unmute? Was it
Okay,
glitching for you?
hopefully I don't get muted while I talk. Okay, so
Okay.
I'm gonna backtrack a little bit. So we have the first things again from the beginning of this from last month in May of 2023. Prigozhin announced the seizure of Bakhmut. From that point, once he announced the seizure of Bakhmut, though, it's very important to highlight that prior to, during, and immediately after seizing it, he has consistently blamed
Prigozhin,
the Russian
Prigozhin,
Wagner
the chief of Wagner. Just go ahead.
Correct. Yeah, for the listeners, the chief of Wagner, Prigozhin, when he has consistently blamed the Russian Minister of Defense Shoigu and the chairman of the Russian General Staff, General Gerasimov. Prigozhin consistently blamed those two Ministry of Defense officials of not providing enough support to Wagner to seize Bakhmut and any other operations they had. Immediately after seizing Bakhmut, Prigozhin announced that he was going to pull Wagner forces out of Ukraine and that he needed time to refit and reconstitute his forces for any possible offensive operations. Between May 2023, and just until yesterday, basically, Prigozhin has consistently and heavily criticized Shoigu and Gerasimov of being incompetent, undermining Russia's objectives in Ukraine, and of being incompetent and leading to the death of thousands of Russian soldiers. Shoigu, mid-June, announced a plan to incorporate every single Russian PMC would have to sign a contract to now be subordinate to the Russian Ministry of Defense. Clearly, this was a challenge to Wagner, and specifically Prigozhin, in his ability to seize absolute control, to maintain control of Wagner. Yesterday, Prigozhin released a statement on his Wagner Telegram channel indicating that the Russian military launched an attack against a Wagner camp.
And I can take over also, so I'll take over a bit from you here. Yeah. Also, I'll take over a bit here. Continue the discussion, then I'll let you fill the gaps as well. Just go back and forth.
While he was complaining on Telegram about how he wasn't getting enough munitions for his troops.
Ian, just quickly, just give 2 seconds. Let me just give the update, and I'll give you the mic back. So we've got Prigozhin, the head of the Russian mercenary group Wagner. He accused Russia of bombing his military sites in Ukraine. So it was near Bakhmut. So he said that the bombing, and I remember we were preparing for the Imran Khan interview we did, I don't know how many, probably yesterday, I don't know how many hours ago. So we had it prepped, and I told Suleiman, my co-host, I'm like, hey man, we should probably delay that. Prigozhin is saying that his base was bombed by the Russian military. And then we concluded that it's likely or hopefully him over-exaggerating as he usually does. Despite the Russian military defense claiming that there is no truth to his claim, Prigozhin said that 25,000 mercenaries would take part in a military coup organized by him. It was yesterday. I'm not keeping track of time. It's been a while I haven't slept. Those who destroyed our guys today, who destroyed tens of thousands of lives of Russian soldiers, will be punished. That's what Prigozhin said. Now, initially, it was nothing targeted at Putin, but our concerns where he was focusing on the on Putin's higher ups, people that the executives that report directly to Putin, and I'll read out who they are in a bit. Those who destroyed our guys today, who destroyed tens of thousands of lives of Russian soldiers, referring to the Ukrainian war, will be punished. So that's what we were hearing this. I remember we were hearing this as we start interviewing Mr. Khan, the Pakistani Prime Minister. Igor Girkin, ex-Russian Federal Security Service, has stated, quote, the military coup attempt has begun. That was the first reference when we got that message of a military coup taking place. It took me a while to call this a coup. Eventually decided to do so. Multiple sources were claiming back then that emergency statements being prepared by Russia's Ministry of Defense. Other sources were claiming that Russian National Guard is on alert, so started getting concerned. Prigozhin sent an audio message saying details start emerging. The Minister of Defense urgently arrived to Rostov in order to conduct an operation to destroy Wagner, saying that they've used artillery and helicopter pilots covertly to destroy us. Some people say that might have been an assassination attempt against Prigozhin, but we just don't know. And then the tension started rising. And then we just saw sudden movement by Wagner, and we saw them get into Russian territory very, very quickly. And then they started approaching Rostov in the southern district. By the way, also, if I get anything wrong, do let me know. And I remember me and Osos were talking as soon as they entered Rostov Oblast, the state, with no resistance. We're sitting there talking about it, and suddenly there's reports of tanks around the headquarters, the southern district headquarters, where the commander of the southern military district and deputy defense minister were located. And then not long after, Prigozhin is sitting there meeting them. And that's where we knew things are really getting serious now, and Putin is at risk because there's a potential alliance between Prigozhin, between Wagner, and the Southern District, which is about a quarter to a fifth of the Russian military. And he took over the command center of the Russian military in Ukraine, which is the majority of the military. And obviously, since then, we've just seen constant movements by Wagner towards Voronezh. And again, they got there pretty quickly. We saw a few clashes then. And then Putin gave a speech. And I'll read a few highlights of the speech for anyone that didn't hear it. And we're almost up to where we are today, where we are now. He said, Russia is waging a hard fight for its future. The troops are fighting heroically. The fate of our people is now being decided. That's Putin's speech. I don't know how long ago anymore. The authorities will now allow a split in Russia to repeat. We face betrayal. Exorbitant ambitions led to treason against Russia. Any unrest in a mortal threat. So it's very, very aggressive words. And he did say any internal unrest is a mortal threat to the state. I think that's one of the more extreme terms he's used. And after that, Prigozhin responded, naming Putin essentially as an enemy, and moving towards Moscow. And that's where we are today. And the move towards Moscow, it went a lot faster than we all expected. And we've had reports hours ago they're already in Oblast, Moscow Oblast, the state of Moscow. And we've had reports from people on the ground, but we haven't been able to confirm them. Anything comes from the ground, it's just very difficult to confirm. But we've had multiple reports now that they're in Moscow Oblast, and some reports, Piotr, you had your sources say they're on the outskirts, but that wasn't confirmed further. Also, was there anything else I missed?
No, that's the generic rundown. Yeah, no, that's good, Mario.
It was a number of.
I appreciate it.
While we were reporting all of this, there were a number of I guess false reports on the destruction of the SMD headquarters that was unconfirmed at first. People were cheering it on, saying, "Yeah, Prigozhin's won." That didn't happen. That literally didn't happen. That was fake. Also, it's worth mentioning that Prigozhin. What led up to this, right? Months ago, he was claiming that he was having munition shortages in Ukraine. That is also unconfirmed, right? Because the Ministry of Defense denies that, and there's now speculation, a lot of speculation, in fact, that he had simply been hoarding all of his ammunition, right? Which is why it enabled him to actually perform this attempted coup, right? This act of insurrection, using all of the weapons and munitions that he had basically hoarded while he was in Ukraine, and to use it against the Russian government, right? So that's and yesterday when he claimed that his camp was attacked, I think people on all sides, whether you're Ukrainian or whether pro-Ukraine, pro-Russia, whatever, pretty much determined, even on the space, right? We speculated quite strongly that that may have been faked, right? Because it looked like a really low quality production. It didn't look like like what he had claimed. He claimed that his whole camp got blown up by MOD. It seemed very unlikely that they would do such a thing, right? So I think that was he used that as a precursor to launch this attack, this act of armed insurrection on the Russian government under the false pretenses, claiming that look, our people they're traitors to us, they're killing us all on the battlefield, and they're not only are they cutting us off from weapons that we desperately need, so we're going to take matters into our own hands. I think we had a lot of some speculation yesterday that Prigozhin, he has been put in a hard spot, right? Because although he made his name in Bakhmut, his claims was that the counteroffensive, that when Ukrainians did a counterattack, Russians would not be able to resist it at all, right? That it would simply crumble. And Sorokin proved him wrong, right? Sorokin and Gerasimov, they proved him wrong.
Ian, I got some breaking news.
Oh, so got breaking news, yeah. Belarusian president,
okay,
is
so
that
I'm just
also?
going to read this. This is from Fight. It's the Belarusian president held talks with Prigozhin today. Lukashenko says that Prigozhin had agreed to stop the movement of armed persons on the territory of Russia and to take further steps to de-escalate. That is coming from a Telegram channel started by Fatix News.
I'll read out the message from the press service of the president of the Republic of Belarus. This is a very important development, a positive development. I'll read out the statement. This morning, Russian President Putin briefed his Belarusian counterpart on the situation in southern Russia with the private military company Wagner. The head of state agreed on joint actions. This is really good news so far. Let's continue. As a follow-up to the agreements, the president of Belarus, having additionally,
be very skeptical.
let me also, can I finish, and then you'll tell us about the being skeptical. As a follow-up to the agreements, the president of Belarus, having additionally specified the situation through his own channels, and an agreement with the president of Russia, held talks with the Wagner PMC Yevgeny Prigozhin. Negotiations continued throughout the day. As a result, they came to an agreement on the inadmissibility of unleashing a bloody massacre on the territory of Russia. Prigozhin accepted the proposal of the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, to stop the movement of armed persons of the Wagner Company on the territory of Russia and take further steps to de-escalate tensions. At the moment, an absolutely profitable and acceptable option for solving the situation is on the table, with security guarantees for the Wagner PMC fighters. As previously reported, also during today, the president of Belarus held 2 meetings with the power bloc of the country on this situation. Initial thoughts, it's a very
Wow,
pretty major development.
that's a massive development. So, I mean, what does Prigozhin get out of
Again,
this
I
deal?
would just be very skeptical. I would be very skeptical that First of all, one, Lukashenko is generally, full of shit. Sorry, I'm just going to say it. Number one. Number two,
Would
if
you
that
release
is
an official
actually
statement
true,
being full of shit? Like nothing to do with it. I mean, why would he?
okay,
Why would he
again,
make
but
this
hold
up?
on. First of all, hold on.
You
Ian.
can ask for
let's
an
guys-
example, he gives you one, and then you freaking
Guys,
shut him down.
let's all source,
Okay,
and
what
then we'll
was
go
the
to
second
Ian
point,
and
all
Colonel.
source?
Please also
Right.
go ahead.
Look, I'm just saying. Look, I'm just saying I'm extremely skeptical of any claims by Lukashenko. But if even
This
if
would align, just quickly, sorry,
case,
this would align also,
Yeah.
this would align with Russian Telegram reports that the Wagner convoy heading to Moscow has stopped. No confirmation from Wagner sources. So we had multiple sources, we've been having it for a while, that the convoy heading to Moscow has stopped. There's been no confirmation from Wagner on this. So this is a very positive development that, I'm not going to say the coup has halted or stopped, but it is a positive development. I think this is the first positive development we've had probably since the coup began. That's the first positive
my
development.
question here,
we've had.
assuming that
Assuming it's valid.
Yeah, assuming it's valid, and I'm assuming that it is. I have no reason to believe otherwise. What does Prigozhin get out of this, right? I mean, how is this deal going to look like? The guarantees that he's getting for him and for his troops, I assume, because they wouldn't, just be throwing themselves into the meat grinder for no reason. I'm assuming, and we have to speculate here, he probably gets, Belarusian citizenship, sort of like, he basically stops being Russian, and he gets some sort of official sanction under the Belarusian government, right? Because he is a persona non grata in Russia right now, right? He is an enemy of the state, and his actions are unpardonable, pretty much, right? I mean, you don't perform treason like this. So, it has to be something like that, right? This is an out for him and an out for his troops because, I mean, there's no way that this would have ended well, right? Not for Prigozhin. There's no way he would have successfully, gotten Moscow to capitulate to him. That just isn't going to work. We don't live in 1917 anymore. And we live in a different world right now. The world would not accept Prigozhin as a leader of the Russian government, and the Russians, furthermore, and this is the crucial part, they would not accept him, deposing their lawfully elected government, to install this military dictator. That's just no way. So I think this is the best outcome, assuming it goes through and it doesn't fall apart.
I'm just inviting someone from the ground. We are getting more reports that it seems this is accurate. Lukashenko's press service stated that at the moment there is a draft of an acceptable option for decoupling the situation with Wagner PMC with security guarantees for his fighters. That's a Russian source there. And then we've got here more information from SOTA. SOTA also, can you tell us what SOTA is? Also, can you hear me?
I believe that's a Russian state media, if I'm not mistaken. But there's so many acronyms I don't know. If somebody knows exactly what it is, please provide it.
Yeah, I'll read it up in a bit. But there's a lot of we're getting more and more sources that it seems this is accurate. Let me invite a couple of speakers that are on the ground in Russia, and then we'll continue. I want to get your initial thoughts. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to make the quick point that, right, as they work out a deal, and even if that includes Belarusian citizenship, understand that Russia still kind of needs Wagner. They're the historical way to look at this is that Putin's overreach necessitated the very rapid rise of Wagner because they needed that ability to contract through them, right? Putin has gone to Ukraine, Syria, Georgia. He's had troops in Belarus. He's had troops, we forget, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago in Kazakhstan to help put down some of the unrest there. He's taken de facto sovereignty between parts of eastern Ukraine, the Crimean Peninsula, the breakaway provinces in Georgia of over 2.5 million people in about 13, 14 years. By any historical sweep, that's not a slow pace. So the need for Wagner or a Wagner-like competing center of power in Russia is going to be maintained, whether this guy gets cleaned out or not. Just wanted to make that point quickly.
So Jason, you think, because you're quite right, like Wagner, the Wagner Group, I mean, Bakhmut was basically the Wagner Group. So are you saying that even if this deal does come into fruition, which we don't know, but we're just basing it on the statement
This
of
will need PMCs, and
Lukashenko?
I have a
Yeah,
breaking
both,
news thing
I'm
on
with you.
this.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I have a
Does
breaking
that mean
news
that
regarding that. So,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, Putin signed a law about an hour and a half ago on the possibility of calling convicts to serve under a contract. The law also provides.
Yeah, we've read that.
Okay.
We've read that 2 hours ago.
Yeah, so that
Yeah,
law
so-
plays into this, right? Because they do need an army that they can conscript without, them being conscripts, right? They have to be, these.
No, but
these convicts.
Ian. The question I was going to ask Jason, but I'll ask you now as well. He still needs the Wagner
Yes.
Group, and so this deal, would it just be Prigozhin, or would it be like a number of people from Wagner Group, and then he'll put a different leader in Wagner Group, and then will there be some kind of like issue with with whom they have allegiance? Like, there's a number of issues that are clear here. What do you think?
That's a very good question, and also one I'd like to know the answer to, because I don't know the answer, and Belarus certainly plays into it. I don't think he would manage to retain his Russian citizenship given what he has done. I think that Wagner and Prigozhin get some sort of a cover from Belarus, and they get to, I guess, officially be Belarusians, but then continue to serve in Wagner, continue to serve in the SMO in Ukraine. So I don't think that's ended, right? That is certainly not ended.
How,
And
if you're
Prigozhin himself is not interested in ending it.
If you're Putin, how can you even trust that? Like, these guys turned on you. There was, let's say in this situation, what you're saying, there was going to be a coup. Like, how can you like even have any modem of like trust on them that they can't do it again? Like, this guy has
Prigozhin
continuously
would
called
probably
out
be taken out of power. I think that the commander, who's in charge of Wagner, is going to have to be bequeathed onto somebody else, right? I don't really see him being in charge anymore, but I do see him getting some sort of like safe harbor given what he has already done. It's like he's proven his point, right? He's made his point.
To this, I always like to look at the markets to see how what the general consensus is.
Yeah,
I don't think they know yet, right?
So at the beginning of the day, like I said, the spread betting markets, the weekend markets, which is the DAX, the Hang Seng, the FTSE, the main markets, right? IG Group, which is the largest spread better, they present peer-to-peer markets. Germany actually opened up, and then when people realized that all hell's breaking loose, European markets went down about 1%. U.S. markets were trading down 60, 70 bips. The news you just broke now, Mario, has lifted markets in the order of around 20, 30 basis points. Liquidity over the weekend.
So I just want to, Ian, I just want to provide an important, I think, just before we take too much credence. One, we have not heard anything from official Wagner channels, nothing at all, or a statement from Prigozhin confirming Lukashenko's statement. So that's number one.
We have to
And
wait.
then number two, if you look at Wagner Telegram channel, up to this point, has been consistently saying the same message. We are going to finish this. We're going to fight, and we're going to finish this. Like we are gun ho. We're on a war path. So I would wait before we take credence to Lukashenko's statement, who has a tendency to be exaggerated and serving Putin's mouthpiece in a way, and Russian media propaganda point of view. I would believe this a lot more if we get an official statement from Prigozhin or Wagner Telegram China confirming this. And I think that is more important right now than just taking Lukashenko at his word.
Yeah, I know. We
I
need
think
to
all
wait.
sources
Just
correct.
like
Sorry,
everything
I've been
else.
waiting for just a bit. So, and my phone's about to die. We've been on here for a few hours. I want to thank all of you for hosting this, folks on the panel, everybody else who's listening, and also to Elon and the team at Twitter for keeping this up and running with over 100,000 people on here. I'm a tech exec during the day. This is not easy. So thank you for that. The last piece that I will kind of leave you with this is I completely agree with all source. Until we hear this from Prigozhin or from Putin, I would take all this with a grain of salt from Lukashenko, just given his history here. So if we go off what's known, as we just mentioned before, just to finish that summary that came, reports of a column of about 5,000 forces, that composition's unknown at this point, headed north towards Moscow. About 2 hours south was the last report, somewhere in the oblast. Reports of about 8 Russian military helicopters shot down, still not confirmed, but there is video, circulating around that's happening. Certainly not enough to take the capital. Level of support from within the government's unknown, so we still don't really know how this is going to play out. The last piece I want to touch on is the reports that were mentioned from Taz about this being a counterterrorism operation. For those of you who are listening and trying to figure out fact from fiction, you need to consider the source and figure out who the target audience is that source broadcasts to. That is a Russian state element that's now calling this a counterterrorism operation. They're not going to have any extra things to bring to bear other than what they're already trying to do. This is more of a domestic political audience that they're speaking to, letting them know that they're actually doing something about this and trying to cast Wagner as terrorists for right now. It's also going to be very interesting to see how Prigozhin would have to walk back comments that were made about them being responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands of Russian soldiers, and they want to overthrow the government. It's really hard to walk that one backwards. So it'll be very interesting to see if this negotiation actually plays out.
Okay, so on the point about it being a counterterrorism,
let me hold on, guys, just 2 seconds, everyone, just 2 seconds, guys, please. There's a lot of speakers. Tara, I know you're on the ground in Russia. You gave us an update earlier in Moscow. Are you there, Tara? Tara, you got to unmute bottom left corner. There seems to be a bit of a lag, so what I need to do what I did before. I need to.
Mario,
I don't see her.
Can I just read a statement from? Wait. I got a statement from Wagner, and I don't think it converts. I'm going to read this. This is coming from Wagner Telegram channel. I'm just going to read it verbatim. Today, along the route of PMC Wagner, all local emergency services continue to work in full and cooperated with the participants of the March of Justice. The ambulance service, the fire service worked. The employees of the Ministry of Internal Affairs continue to provide security. In case of need, they were provided with all kinds of assistance from PMC Wagner. In turn, local services and residents supported the movement of the columns. Logistics routes were not violated. The supply of shops and permits not disrupted. Thank you, Russia. And then they put hashtag Russia with Wagner. This was posted 4 minutes ago.
Just quickly, I will need to do the reset. It's just that we are getting a bit overloading. So if the space crashes, I'm doing the reset we did before. It worked before. If the space crashes, we'll restart it within 1 to 2 minutes right afterwards. Just a heads up. So I'll be doing that reset in a bit, just because we have so many people.
By the way.
But yeah, go ahead, also. Yeah, and Tara, maybe in the meantime, Tara, can we get an update on the situation in Moscow and what we know so far?
Okay, so right now what's happening is everything's quiet here in Moscow itself, because they've imposed, a lot of people are being told to just stay in their apartments, to stay inside, wherever they are. And I got an intelligence report, it's unverified, that the president of Belarus has negotiated a temporary stand down with the Wagner Group. And again, this is unverified, but it's pretty good. It's a very good source that I got this from, who's usually right, but basically has negotiated them to stand down for now, and they're making some sort of agreement over Prigozhin. So the march should have happened right now. Like right now, Prigozhin's troops should have been in Moscow. They're not. And so this negotiated is not permanent. This is just like a step towards like a de-escalation is what they're calling it.
And just some breaking news, which adds to that, I think it's breaking news. It says Prigozhin published a new audio recording saying, "We turn our columns around and go back." So again, it adds to this statement by Lukashenko. It adds to the fact that the Wagner is no longer moving forward. It does look like, I know people are saying don't take it with a grain of salt, but again, we're trying to piece.
Suleiman, I think we got audio. I think we're getting audio from Prigozhin. I got to confirm it. I got to see if the guys who translate. Hold on. What they're saying, and now this is Prigozhin, and this I got to confirm this transcript. But he says, "quote There were negotiations, but no deal." I'll see if I can get the exact translation of his audio, but he's saying that there was no deal yet.
So what about this bit of the audio?
Let me.
Also, where it says,
I'm resetting
our columns
just
around and go back.
Yeah, so guys, both of you mentioned the sources. I will be resetting the space now. If it crashes, I'll be restarting again. It worked before. Let's see if it works. Just a reminder for everyone, go on my profile and go into the space if it does crash. I'll let you continue, guys. Sorry. All source and Suleiman, just on those two reports.
Yeah. So the one I got is from, it says SOTA. So again, it's a Telegram group, but also will be able to give us more information on that. But separately, why I'm mentioning that is when you piece in what Tara said, you piece in what Ian said, you piece in what the president of Belarus said, the fact that the Wagner group as a group of forces are not moving forward, it does seem like there is some form of negotiation going on. Maybe there's no deal at the moment. That makes sense. They haven't got a concrete deal, but it does look like there is some form of negotiation going on. So again, that's something to take into consideration when you piece things together. That seems highly likely.
Yeah, and they're calling it a de-escalation. That's it. They're not calling it a resolution, just a de-escalation at this point.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out that if they do want to have a proper deal, that would need to be signed and there need to be witnesses, right? It has to be done.
All right, guys. So first, the reset worked, so everything is fine, and we're still running the space.
That's good.
Walmart just tweeted, and he's DM'd me as well personally, saying this is from Reuters. Prigozhin, in an audio message, said, "To avoid bloodshed, we are returning our convoys to bases." Again, to avoid bloodshed, we are returning our convoys to bases. We are seeing de-escalation for the first time since all this started. We could have a peace deal. I don't know how that peace deal would look like, and who will have control of the government, of the Kremlin. Our guess would be Putin.
What you want to ask is what happens to Prigozhin, right? You don't ask
exactly
what happens to the Russian government, because the Russian government is fine. It's always been fine. It's never been under attack. Even Prigozhin didn't say,
I wouldn't go.
Ian,
I wouldn't go to the extreme. Come on.
I would, because he never ever targeted Putin, right?
Then obviously you didn't. Go back. Ian, you were asleep. He did. He mentioned Putin many times and said Russia will have a new. He said Russia will have a new president.
Was that from him or was it from?
That was from Prigozhin. That was from him directly. So I'll let you go. I'll let you go check all this stuff.
That one back.
Yeah, go. Yeah, exactly. So
Mario, I think we're getting conflicting reporting because and I think this is where we need to get somebody to translate the entire transcript. So maybe he is saying, "Hey, we're de-escalating," but Prigozhin has said now consistently on multiple Telegram channels affiliated with Wagner that says negotiations were unsuccessful. So the question then is, does that mean because negotiations were unsuccessful, we are going to continue? Or, hey, because there's negotiations, although they're unsuccessful, we're going to halt to see the results of these negotiations? I think that is kind of the discrepancy because it could be exactly that.
Also, most of the translations that are coming out from his audio, and I guess we need some verification, is that he's turning back. There's another one here.
The translation I got is that he's turning back.
He could be turning back, but he is also saying that the negotiations were unsuccessful.
They're not done yet because there's no deal. The negotiation is ongoing, right? He has to actually sit down with all the participants involved in this whole conflict and work a proper deal out where they sign a contract. That's just how it works. You can't just have a telephone deal.
And Prigozhin's goal with this was about Shigoi. He wanted a difference. So it was really with between the upper elite military leaders. That's what this is about. And
well,
I don't know who said it, but
Tara,
you're right.
If this translation is right, he said they wanted to disband Wagner. So it looks like that was his motivation behind it. He thought.
I mean, I think again. I'm sorry. I'm going to read something else from literally Prigozhin's Telegram channel. I'm just going to read it verbatim. And this is where it's confusing. I don't know if there's like just a lot of reporting coming out and just information. But here's another one specifically. He says, Prigozhin denies reports of agreement with Lukashenko. I did not accept any proposals from the president of Belarus, Lukashenko. Negotiations were held, but were unsuccessful, said the head of Wagner PMC. And this is the quote, "We went and continue to go to Moscow. Our first units are already on the outskirts. We are waiting for reinforcements, and we will go inside. And that is like literally from a Wagner Telegram channel with Prigozhin.
All right. So while you guys interpret this, I do want to go to a tweet by President Zelensky, President of Ukraine, 3 minutes ago. We all remember how the head of Russia threatened the world in 2021. He had some ultimatums. He was trying to show a kind of strength. The year 2022 showed that he confused his illusions and the lies he was fed with strength. They in the Kremlin are capable of resorting to any terror, capable of resorting to any stupidity, but they cannot provide even 1% of the necessary control, and they are the problem. In one day, they lost several of their million-plus cities and showed all Russian bandits, mercenaries, oligarchs, and anyone else how easy it is to capture Russian cities and probably arsenals with weapons. Now, it is very important that no one in the world remains...
Mario, I got to read something else from AP Wagner. So the AP Wagner Telegram channel that reports directly, this is AP Wagner. This is, quote, the state of Russia, right? The state has long ceased to exist. Putin deliberately destroyed all the institutions of statehood. Corruption has finished off the rest. The end of this feast of life is imminent. Undermining bridges will not stop what is inevitable. Justice will prevail. And what he's saying about the bridges is because we're getting reports of Russian Air Force destroying
This is not
bridges.
Prigozhin,
This is from
though. This
AP
is a
Wagner Telegram channel.
This is not Prigozhin himself.
AP Wagner.
Yeah, so he
But that's not Prigozhin.
That's fine,
Prigozhin released an audio message, and I can read it here. It's very short.
Yeah, I'm gonna read it now, Ian. So he released an audio, says, and it's from Baza. So again, this is from a Telegram group, and he says they wanted to disband Wagner PMC. In a day, we walked less than 200 kilometers from Moscow. During this time, we did not shed a single drop of blood from our fighters. Now the moment has come when blood can be shed. Therefore, understanding all the responsibility for that Russian blood will be shed on one of the sides, we turn our columns and leave in the opposite direction in the field camps, according to the plan. So this is Prigozhin's message, which has been translated, needs to be verified, but it's a translation, and he's saying the opposite also. But that's fine. We're getting very points. But
so a lot of this too is about money. Remember earlier when you were talking about the negotiations that Prigozhin had, he didn't get the $20 billion rubles that he 20 billion rubles, excuse me, that he wanted,
sorry, Tara,
not dollars.
Apologies, we do interrupt when there's like breaking news. Again, now from TASS, which is it's gone now. But anyway, sorry, continue. But it was the same point.
But basically, a lot of this has to do with money, and you need to keep that in mind with Prigozhin. He is a mercenary. These are paid soldiers, and there was a failed contract that just happened that was 20 billion rubles. I misspoke and said dollars, and it was rubles. Sorry.
Yeah, and so another, again from the TASS Telegram group, it says Prigozhin said that PMC Wagner is turning the columns and going back to the field camp. So again, we're getting similar translations, similar reporting about the same point about them turning back. Again,
but the reason why he's not accepting, I think, that is because one of the terms was that Prigozhin be unconditionally surrender himself to the Russian state. So of course that probably wasn't what he wanted to do. So that's why they're saying it's a de-escalation. So anyway, that's yeah, I mean, but a lot of this has to do with money. So we need to again look back at what was going on with the exchange and the rejection by Prigozhin of the money and that kind of thing regarding all of this.
You know, one thing I want to say is what an incredible time to be witnessing history, and what an incredible job Mario, Suleiman, your entire team, All Stars have been doing. It's just an incredible job and an incredible service to the public to be able to share this moment in history all together. You know, I believe what we're witnessing now is the beginning of the end of Putin's Russia as we know it. And we're watching, you know, his entire
source of his this is not. That's
I believe so.
It is not the end of Putin's Russia. No, this
as we know it.
Not really.
That's the end
Hi
of
guys,
Putin's
this
Russia.
is
it's
Russian Market
beginning
speaking.
of the end of
If I
Putin's
may
Russia
just
as we
interrupt
know
you.
I really do.
Guys, we'll go one by one. Let's go Russian markets if you don't mind, guys. Russian markets, go ahead. Good to have you, sir.
Yeah, hi guys.
And thank you for the nice, kind words, Mickey, by the way. Go ahead,
yeah, thank you. This is definitely not the end of Putin's Russia. And also, I was quite suspicious when it started, the whole fuss about it, this coup, and overnight everybody was talking about this. I didn't take it, honestly, too serious. It reminded me strongly of this Turkish coup in 2016. I even suspect it was in a way a little bit staged. I would even say that maybe Prigozhin wanted this attention, but then I saw these military jets bombed and all these victims, and I said, well, it really does look serious. But now I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it is some sort of operation. We will maybe find out later on. And also this question about stock markets and ruble. Actually, the Russian market itself, it's actually cut from the world market. So there won't be any impact on Asian markets, on US markets, because we are quite isolated. I might see that there might be some spikes in oil futures for the crude oil, but generally, I think we won't see any impact. And the whole story will be then forgotten in a week. I really think it is non, as you say, non-argument, just nothing. It's the whole fuss about it. It was made just so that the Prigozhin gets his attention. And don't forget that Prigozhin also did his troll factory, and he knows how to make scandal. But again, he made this huge how to say trouble for the whole Russian government and also for Russian nation and people. We were quite worried for these hours, but now in the end, even we see Lukashenko, the hero who brings this peace to and convince Prigozhin to bring back all the forces.
I want to go just going to go through the reports again. So it does seem that based on the various reports, we do have a confirmation that Wagner is seeming to be turning the columns and going back to the field camps. It does seem that the coup, I'm not going to say it's over, but it's at least on pause for now. We're going to see what happens next. So that's just the latest updates we're getting.
Mario, if I could just make my point, I understand fully. I'm not saying this is the end of Putin or end of Russia. I'm saying it's the end of Putin's Russia as we know it. We always knew Russia as a singular pole of power. Now what's starting to emerge is a multipolar Russia with multiple sources of power. This is something new, and this is a historical moment for us to be witnessing. We don't know how it's going to play out, but now we're looking at Lukashenko, Prigozhin, oligarchs. This is before there was one person alone in charge. He decided everything, and that's no longer the case. That's historic.
Sorry, just
Patrick, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if this is accurate, if Putin is turning around, then the question
you mean Wagner?
Prigozhin, sorry. Prigozhin. If he's turning around, the question you have to ask yourself is why?
That's a good question.
And that's one that I'm not hearing. They can't keep him out of Moscow with what they've got in the area. We know this. So why is he turning around? He hasn't achieved his stated objective. Gerasimov and Shoigu are still there. He hasn't deposed Putin. Why is he turning around?
Hey Mario, sorry to
interrupt,
but I think the space is glitching because a lot of people are getting booted out. I thought I was the only one. So, about to go on a rampage here, but it looks
Ian,
like
okay. Hold on, Ian. Yeah, I know. Just Patrick was
please?
speaking in, please.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Patrick.
And it's not because it's not 1917, as some people blithely urge us to believe. These are the same people that told us that modern conventional warfare was a thing of the past before February 24th, 2022. It's not. The Russians have been ruled by strongmen since time immemorial. That hasn't changed. If Prigozhin wanted Moscow, I think he could have taken it, maybe. So the question we have to ask, if he turns around, is why? And I'm not seeing any obvious answers to it.
What happens to Prigozhin next? So I'm just reading here. Prigozhin says it's over, according to Dmitry. I'll read out the quote. They were going to dismantle Wagner. We came out on 23rd of June to the March of Justice. In a day, we walked to nearly 200 kilometers away from Moscow. In this time, we do not spill a single drop of blood of our fighters. Now, the moment has come when blood may spill. That's why, understanding the responsibility for spilling Russian blood on one of the sides, we are turning back our convoys and going back to the field camps according to the plan.
Well, I was right. Hate to say it.
Okay. So we just need. So there's the audio of this. I am just telling you right now. There's a disconnect. If this reporting is true, if you track the AP Wagner and Wagner specific Telegram channels, this is
also,
not what
also,
they're
we understand. We
There's a lot of
also,
angry Wagner
also,
fanboys
guys.
out there.
All right, so guys, let's just keep it back to easy. But Von, good to have you back, and also, so I understand what you're mentioning, but I think it's good to verify that behind the scenes. According to all the sources, it's hold on, Ian. It's according to all the sources, it seems to have ended. But look, it definitely keep verifying it in the background. Let's discuss it in the back channels, and then share it. I'm just going through. Austin Defender is awake now. He just posted 2 minutes ago. The leader of the Wagner PMC, Yevgeny Prigozhin, has confirmed that he has ordered his forces to begin to move back towards their field bases in southern Russia and eastern Ukraine, stating Wagner realizes all the responsibility for the fact that Russian blood will be shed on one of the sides. We now deploy our columns in the opposite direction to the field camps according to the plan. That's the best news we've heard. Oh, sorry, I've got everyone muted by accident. That's the best news we've heard. Von, Igor, I'd love to get your thoughts on what we just heard. Good to have you both back on the panel.
Yeah, I just took a nap, woke up, and apparently it's over.
No, okay, so not over, but it just happened literally about 30 minutes
Very
ago.
soon.
It does seem like it's de-escalating. We don't know what's going to happen next, but it
Wagner
is
fanboys in
de-escalating.
full cope right now on Telegram. I see them melting down. They're like, "No, this is not true. It's disinformation."
All right, so Ian, please.
I'm not talking about anybody on the panel. I'm talking about
no,
Wagner fanboys.
Ian, it's not about what you're saying. It's about just jumped in when Von was about to speak. That's all. Von, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, and then Igor, please.
My thoughts on this are generally the same as they always are. This is why I like to wait to see how things play out and not speculate wildly. Not that anyone could have predicted that it would play out this way, but I'm just hoping that people maybe learned a valuable lesson about letting the speculation and imagination get the better of you before things finish playing out.
This has also been reported by CNN as well. Just, I mean, for those who value the reporting of mainstream media as well, it's also been reported by CNN. This argument about speculation. Look, Von, right? Everybody, because we're not on the ground. We're not talking to Prigozhin. We're not talking to Putin. So whenever some form of move is being made, it's what one does is analyzes what the impact of any statement is, what are the various angles of it. And
Sully, you're right, but that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, and I was specific, wild speculation. Wild speculation is an analysis. It's letting your imagination get the best of you and just going wild on a speculation train, which was happening for hours in here earlier. Let's be honest about that. I'm talking sober analysis, good.
All right, guys. Can you stop this whole back and forth? I was right, you were right. This is speculation. This is not speculation. It just gets a bit annoying. I'm trying to be patient about it. Can we just stick to what we know now and keep reporting what we know, what we don't know, and speculate on what could happen next, mentioning what is speculation, what is not speculation? Igor, I want to go to you, and then I want to go back to Von again, just to get the thoughts on. I know, Von, you just woke up, so I'll let you read everything as well. Igor, we've seen heavy de-escalation. I think this is the first time in I want to check how long I've been awake. So this is the first time since this has all started that we're seeing positive news. Mario? So I do want to get your thoughts. I want to get your thoughts, Igor. Is it over, and what could happen next? And I know you've been covering closely.
Before you comment, I do want to share this quickly.
Hey guys,
Igor,
just
1 second.
I think he can't hear you. Osos, go ahead, Osos. And Igor, I'll give you the mic right after. Go ahead, Osos.
Hold on. Good. Yeah. So I did notice. So in AP Wagner, one of the comments that is actually getting a lot of reactions and quote is from one of the Wagner guys saying, end quote, "I'm breaking my contract." So I think that now we're starting to see the Wagner Telegram channel follow along these claims of Prigozhin's deal in negotiation with Lukashenko, and apparently a lot of Wagner guys are not happy about this. But I did just see that on Telegram that I wanted to share.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Also, keep us posted, Igor. I'd love to get your thoughts. Igor, you got to unmute bottom left corner.
Yeah. Oh my. So apparently, Tula governor in Russia, Alexei Dumin, was involved in the negotiations on behalf of the Kremlin with Prigozhin. Prigozhin's announcement is very, very unambiguous and very direct that he's turning around his columns that were going toward Moscow, that he's gotten to within 200 kilometers, and then now he's saying to avoid bloodshed on either of the sides, he's doing this. There's a claim that the deal is that Prigozhin gives up the idea of going to Moscow, and in response, from the other side, Wagner gets security guarantees from the Kremlin, and they will deal with the situation of Shoigu and Gerasimov, meaning that Shoigu and Gerasimov will be replaced as Prigozhin had wanted and had been calling for their executions for quite a long time now. What we have to look for is whether Wagner leaves Rostov. Because if Wagner doesn't leave Rostov, the coup is going to continue. It may be him just buying time and collecting more forces and resources and allies, while there's going to be some big exhales going on at the Kremlin. If he doesn't leave Rostov, that's likely what's going to happen. I do not expect Prigozhin to withdraw his forces from Rostov, which is a city of 1.1 million people.
We've got here one of our regular speakers says 100% agree with your statements there, Igor. I do want to get more feedback on the news we just saw. Piotr, Patrick, anyone else that wants to jump in, just put your hand up so I know.
Can I jump in on that?
Yeah, Piotr, go ahead.
Thanks a lot, buddy. So this it's really interesting, right? I'm just trying to take stock of what we've just heard from Igor as well as what's happening, right? I think it's quite clear that the intent was always to scare Putin, right? This is no longer Putin's Russia. This is Putin and Prigozhin, or Putin, but under the auspices of he knows he doesn't have as 100% consolidated control as he thought he did. And I think Prigozhin always meant to do a bit of a feint, possibly because he always emphasized in his earlier statements late last night about the defense ministry. It was about Gerasimov, it was about Shoigu. It was never specifically about the Kremlin per se. So he wanted the defense ministry to be changed. He wanted the military structure of Russia to be changed. So going out from here, I think we're going to see a significant purge, potentially a massive reshuffling. I'm going to be fascinated to see what Putin comes out saying immediately after this. I'm going to be fascinated to see what the Chinese have to say, but also what Medvedev and some of the Defense and Security Council are going to say, because at the end of the day, the Defense Ministry works very close in hand with the FSB. And if those guys didn't see this coming, like they didn't see the drones coming, even if it was a symbolic strike on the Kremlin, it shows you a massive hole in Russia's
Piotr, can I ask you a question? Just something is not clicking. The Putin and Wagner, they've both crossed the red line. They've all, Putin called this fighting heroically for the fate of the people, called it a betrayal, a mortal threat. Split in Russia is going to repeat itself.
What happened, Mario.
And then we saw Prigozhin. I'll go to you right after Ian, after Piotr. But we saw them Prigozhin just mention Putin and just move militarily to Moscow. I'm glad to see what was happening, but I just don't understand what's going to happen next. Like, how would this look like? Would they go back to business as usual? Piotr, Patrick, and then Ian.
So my 2 cents is that this was about. I think the Wagner Group, or at least Prigozhin, had been planning something of this level. Maybe not this scale and this rapidity, but clearly I think that there was a degree of desire to force Putin to actually do something instead of, they've been making threats. Increasingly, Prigozhin has been making these very strong statements, words, and then it was time for action. So I am speculating here. I want to make that clear for everybody, but that's based on, previous examples that we've seen in the past few weeks and months. What have we seen? A huge amount of losses on both sides, but including Wagner at Bakhmut. It took them over 9 months to try and secure a town which was never strategically important for the Russians or the Ukrainians. And so clearly Prigozhin is feeling resentful and frustrated by that. And he was like, right, okay, I'm going to show how incompetent and how capable we as a Wagner force can quickly take some of the most well-defended
Piotr, the question, I'll repeat the question again. But
Sorry.
what could happen next? That's okay. But what could happen next? Like,
Well,
how?
mate, I think what's going to happen next is Putin is going to. I don't think there's going to be a change in leadership. I think there's going to be a removal of certain actors in the defense ministry. I think that those people that came out very candidly and expressed their support for Putin will suddenly disappear. And I think that this is, but it's difficult to tell because we're not in the mind of Putin. What I will say, bottom line, and I'll pass over to you, is that this is a new Russia in the sense of Putin is not, he hasn't got both hands on the steering wheel anymore. There is someone else in the cockpit who is, implicitly, forcing him, right? His position is severely weakened if it wasn't already from the war.
I completely disagree with your assessment of that. I think
Good
Putin
to
is
know,
playing
Ian.
chess. Now, keep in mind, when all this was happening, what happened in Ukraine, right? The counteroffensive restarted, right? He restarted counteroffensive, pushed back a lot of positions. And at the end of the day, these Wagnerites, they're Russians, right? They don't want to see all of their efforts in Ukraine be diminished by this action, right? And nobody wants to see that. That's not the goal. The goal is to strengthen Russia, and Prigozhin himself has been extremely clear that the SMO would continue even after all of this happens, right? What I'm going to speculate now, I'm not in the mind of Putin, but I'm thinking like he plays chess, and right now he's going to consolidate his power. He's going to recognize all the failures of the Russian military and consolidate that under a more effective strategy. Like this is, if anything, it works out in favor of Putin.
But to Piotr's point, just to Piotr's point, and I'll be very fast. Just to Piotr's point, he's just talking about the reshuffling of power.
How on earth does
How
that work in favor of
before it was
Putin?
Putin and Putin alone who made all the decisions. Now the person who's going to help guide Russia's military decisions is going to be Wagner Group and Yevgeny Prigozhin. This is an entirely new framework of power for the state of Russia, and all of Putin's power emanates from his ability to control things and decide things. Putin in his pomp. This does not happen for Putin in his pomp. Putin in his pomp, first of all, no one has the balls to challenge him or stick their finger in his eye and challenge him. But Putin in his pomp crushes this revolt, takes power, and looks like a hero in Russia. Now that is not the case. He gave a speech which was pretty tepid, and now there's nothing but question marks in Russia. This is not something that would have happened just a few years ago.
So we do have just a battalion, Wagner battalion, that's going to hopefully join the space if they can. So I'm just sending him an invite now. In the meantime, I do want to read something that just came out. So I am getting reports that Wagner's troops are going back away from Moscow. So we're getting back to their military bases. But I just don't understand what is going to happen to. So everyone was saying it. I think everyone agreed. Prigozhin is we don't know if he's even going to survive this. If he's going to end up being jailed, there's no way he's going to continue operating as usual. But if this is the case, he's going back. He's no longer advancing towards Moscow. So either there's a deal to ensure his safety, or he's going to maintain a base in the south and maintain forces as form of protection. I just don't know how it's going to look for Prigozhin and what options Putin has. I'm sure things are being discussed in the background. Von?
So I expect to see Shoigu and Gerasimov move the rest, shuffled around eventually. I also expect to see anyone who sided with the coup to be purged, like Erdogan did, eventually, not right away. As for Prigozhin, I mean, amnesty was offered to everyone who put down their arms, and he did, so that applies to him too, technically. I think it was there was a lot of saber rattling and a lot of brinksmanship, but that amnesty and Lukashenko stepping in were a means for everyone to save face and go home without killing anyone. So happy ending, I guess, for the time being.
Patrick, I want to go to you, and again, my question is, I'm hoping to get some sort of answers of how that could look like, because the reason I just was surprised to see a resolution is I just didn't know, because when you cross a red line, it's just kind of the point of no return. I think we all kind of agreed that a few hours ago, that it was just difficult to see, to see either side take a step back, and someone has to emerge as the winner, either through conflict or the military chess happening behind the scenes. But it just seems that they've both agreed to kind of just end this peacefully. So what I want to try to understand is, how could they end it peacefully?
Well, the answer is they can't. And there's an old saying, if you take a shot at the king, you better not miss. Whatever Prigozhin thought he was doing, this looks like a shot at the king. And if he leaves Putin alive and in power, he's a dead man. Putin will consolidate, he will rebuild, he won't make this mistake again. And eventually he will purge Prigozhin and Wagner and anybody else who was even slightly hesitant to back the regime, because he has to. And if Prigozhin really thinks that this is going to go back to the way it was, he's a fool.
Well, hasn't been a fool so far. Every decision of his has been very calculated.
Well, they always are until they aren't.
I mean, this is the issue, really. I agree with what sorry, I couldn't, whoever said that, because you essentially have a situation where one of them has to go. You can't have a scenario where they're both going to coexist now. And so the president of Belarus getting involved gives them an out, gives them both an opportunity not to look bad. And if somehow, which I have doubts about, that if he's able to give the leadership of the Wagner group to somebody else, then that would be a win for Putin. But I just doubt it, because he's he's so involved in being in charge of a Wagner group, and the Russian military have been relying on the Wagner group. For example, in Bakhmut, this is, despite whatever happens, this is still a huge loss for Putin, in my opinion.
I wonder what you're thinking if you're Xi Jinping now and you're sitting in Beijing. I mean, you rely on Russia, sort of existentially for commodities, and you're seeing, basically a private military group charge up to essentially uncontested up to Moscow with tanks, and now there's this power play. You're not really sure how it's going to shake out. I'm sure you're talking to people on the ground, but Russia is the most important, most strategic partner for China. You're seeing the United States trying to build this strategic NATO alliance with India to continue, and you're just sitting here like, oh, this does not look good for us. I wonder what's happening in Beijing and what they're thinking about.
Do you want to watch it play out?
I mean, that's an excellent question, because Mickey, like anyone knows, in these Ukraine-Russia discussions, I've always been pushing that I've not been in support of Ukraine as much as everybody else is. But even in this one, when I'm seeing what's happening, it just again makes Russia look weak. It makes, for example, NATO look a lot stronger. It makes it, and I know this is not about NATO, but you just have to look at it from a holistic perspective. I mean, anyone who's negotiating with Russia, and Russia was making even deals in what you're referring to, Mickey, they're having a discussion with China. We know that. I mean, this just puts everybody and gives everybody a situation where they'll have less confidence about going down that road now.
We'll come back 2 weeks from now and see what it looks like.
Ian, what do you think?
Yeah, okay. So I think come back 2 weeks from now and see what that looks like. Is the SMO going to ramp up? I mean, that's going to tell us everything we know about this current situation right now, which, arguably is there's a fog of war situation going on right now. But 2 weeks from now, what does this look like? What does Russia look like? What does Ukraine look like in 2 weeks? Are they going to ramp up are they going to escalate the SMO? Because I predict that's what's going to happen.
They're going to have to, aren't they, Ian? They're going to have to significantly escalate to try and make people forget this, because this is a
and
disaster.
There's also a consolidation of power, right? I mean, like I mentioned before, like Putin's playing chess here, and I think China is also playing chess. They're going to play the long game. They're not going to make any knee-jerk reactions or make any comments on the situation until it blows over, right? That's a smart move, is just to keep quiet and monitor the situation.
I just want to read this, and again, this is from Ocean Defender, so I'm just going to read it because I've seen also a lot of accounts claim this, and this is from Russian state media, although I don't have the exact source, so I'm just going to read it directly. According to Russian state media, major changes to the leadership of the Russian Ministry of Defense, including changes to the current defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, and the Army Chief of General Staff, Valery Gerasimov, have reportedly been agreed upon in order to stop the march of Wagner PMC Group towards the capital of Moscow. These negotiations have also reportedly included the assured security of the Wagner Group. So if this is true, then this is what we were talking about earlier about Prigozhin, through the threat of force and violence, managed to get Shoigu and Gerasimov removed, if these reports come out true, indicating that, for all intents and purposes, unless I think this is where I think Putin now has to plan his plan B, how does he regain control? I think, Patrick, you said it. Because right now, the guy who controls the guns and has the military force in Russia that can actually affect change, as demonstrated by what's going on, appears to be Prigozhin. So Putin definitely has to come up with a plan to tame it. But we got to see if these reports come true and Shoigu and Gerasimov are removed from the Russian Ministry of Defense.
So if they are removed, I think it shows, if anything, that Putin has always been in control. This thing was theater, right? I mean, we speculated early on that this was theater.
how he could have fired them in a heartbeat, and nobody would have questioned him as much.
Are you sure
Wagner
about that? I
basically
mean,
launched
these
the
guys are
coup.
protected.
No,
They have a
no,
lot of
Ian,
political
you're right.
support in the Kremlin, right?
Okay.
Shoigu
Okay,
and
so Wagner
Gerasimov have a
launching
lot
a
of protections
coup.
in the Kremlin. And this,
So
Prigozhin's always been calling it, right? He didn't call it a coup at first, right? The coup label was given to him by the Russian media and by the international media. But for him, and he has returned to this rhetoric about how it's a march of justice. It's proven its point. He proved his point, right? That the heads of the MOD need to be replaced. That needs to be some systemic change there that is going to benefit the Russians on the front lines. I mean, what was their meeting 3 days ago, 4 days ago, maybe 5 days ago by now? Because we're talking about this a day after this has all happened. What was that meeting between Putin and Prigozhin about? We don't know, right? We can only speculate on it. But I think Putin has always been playing chess here. And I might sound like maybe I'm being a bit of a fanboy or maybe wishful thinking here, but I mean, when was the last time Putin's made a mistake like this that
okay,
saw
Ian,
something like this happen ever?
The meetings between a leader and the person who's launching a coup against that leader in history has happened. We've seen it in Mali. We've seen it in the across. That's not an indication that Sudan recently, Hamedi and Rouhani met consistently all the time, and Hamedi failed at the coup, and now they're in civil war. If
Putin's
for
not
Putin to
those
say
guys.
that, if
Hold
you're
on, Ian,
telling
hold
me
on.
then Shoigu and Gerasimov, if you're actually advocating that Shoigu and Gerasimov, with all reporting indicates, were lapdogs for Putin, that is clearly what it is, had enough power to be in control of the Kremlin, and that Putin could not have just automatically fired them, then you're just proving our point that Putin is not the most powerful man. So either
and now
he
perhaps
couldn't
he
fire
is.
Shoigu and Gerasimov,
And now perhaps he is.
he couldn't fire. After declaring war on Prigozhin
The
and Prigozhin
consolidation of
having the
power
guns,
looks like this, right? And what we're going to see now is a purge, right? A general purge of the MOD, as well as all of the staff units that sided with Wagner. They're gone. They've proven that they're disloyal.
Is it Prigozhin going to take over?
Also,
Because
also,
that's
can I
the
ask you a quick,
Prigozhin has the weapons.
also a quick question, because
Oh.
I did miss a bit. What in terms of from the I know we're concentrating on the coup, but just in terms of what impact has this had? Because I heard Mario saying that there has been a loss in land. There's been movement from Ukraine. So in terms of from that perspective, how much have an impact has it had on the Ukraine?
I mean, I think there's some footage that's coming out, and I think there's going to have to be confirmed. But I don't want people to
lost ground. Also, has Russia lost ground due to this?
There is
or has
reporting
had
of it.
Zero to minimal impact.
I think there has been reporting of it. There's been reporting that Russia has lost ground. There has been reports that Ukraine has crossed the Dnieper River. But obviously, the whole entire focus right now has been on the current situation domestically in Russia, not on on Ukraine. And we have to get, although those videos might be a little bit delayed, and then it takes time to actually geoconfirm exactly what's happening. And then again, from Ukrainian sources, we have said there has been reports of Russian forces have been pulling out in certain sectors along the front line. Now, I don't believe is determinative of now Ukraine has the upper hand, they're going to win automatically. But clearly what Prigozhin did in Russia right now clearly had a major disruptive effort on Russia's defense one way or another. The question is, how quickly can they recuperate if this is done? Because I think the excellent point was brought up. We need to see if Prigozhin actually follows his words and actually leaves Rostonov dogs. That is an important aspect.
The argument of that also is that if there hasn't been, and this just goes to what Ian was saying, I just want to balance out the discussion, that if there has only been a minimal amount of movement from Ukraine, it hasn't in the battlefield, there hasn't been significant impact. He gets to consolidate power, and therefore Russia in the long term is a lot
How does he consolidate? How does he consolidate power? And Prigozhin has the amount of power he has.
Ian's argument is that basically you've got people like Prigozhin, who was basically causing discontent in the administration. You saw him calling out the MOD a number of times. Putin might have used this and also found people who basically didn't trust him.
I think this theory would have made sense about.
No, I'm not. This is not my position.
Yeah, but I think it's just not. I wouldn't want to. Yeah, I just don't want to. I want to push.
Well, like I said, you got to see how it plays out in a
couple
of weeks. Right?
Yeah, let's see. But I don't want to push. Hold on. Hold on.
Then it's going to be a big deal.
I'm not sure if you can hear me speak, but I was saying is that I think we've explained that theory pretty well. I think we're past it, and I just want
really
to
think
what
so?
I want to focus
We're not
again.
past
I don't
it. We're
know.
not past it. Just something to consider. It's how we passed it. If he starts basically
But Mario,
taking
I
out
think
some
the
of his
important
commanders,
aspect.
how we passed it. No, we're not
Hold
past
on,
it.
Suleiman.
There's something
This
there
is
you
the
might say it's
constant.
less credible. Also, let me finish my point. Or you might make the argument that it's less credible, but you can't make the argument that we're past it. That's like the.
But Mario, if I may, just and then we'll go.
Thank you,
I
Suleiman.
think, but again, this is the problem when we're having these debates. Remember when we first started this debate, what was the constant argument for those who are saying who are in favor of Putin? This was a psyops operation by the Russians to something Ukraine, something. Right? That was the and then ever since then the goalpost continues to shift. This is what clearly happens. Wagner
No,
was
but
able
also
to take
that happens,
advantage.
and that happens on both sides, bro. Like even now, when
Okay,
it
Guys,
happens on all sides, even now, I'm seeing like you're right. That did happen. People make whoever's pro Russia or pro Putin was making them excuses. Similarly, now when the deal's happening, people on the other side are having a panic as well. So this happens. Like it's not one side who does this, and that's why from the balance perspective, like I agree with you that happens, but that's part of it. But anyway, let me go to Patrick. Patrick, what's your thoughts on what's going to happen next? So we know that there's these discussions. How long do we wait before we find out whether there's going to be fruition in these discussions, or will there be movement again? Could there be a retreat? Like, what do we think is going to be happening?
Is there actually one thing I want to ask Patrick? Is there a possibility any of this could be a bluff? Considering that I just don't understand how Prigozhin could still be in power after what we saw. So Patrick, maybe that's a question I'd like to know.
Well, I mean, I think I had this said earlier. I think in the long run, Prigozhin gets purged. He has to. And I have to say, I don't agree with Ian on this. There is no way Putin did this just to get rid of Gerasimov and Shoigu, and for two reasons that stand out to me at least. Number one is the damage to his own legitimacy. It looks like he almost just lost his capital. Whatever Machiavellian games he was playing, that's going to be an impression on a lot of people.
2 battalions?
Two,
I don't think so.
Ian,
a
please,
lot of his own troops refused to fight. And that's the other side of this. Yeah, they were conscripts. Yeah, they were rear area units, but they refused to oppose this. And that betrays a level of rot in the Russian army that is genuinely dangerous. I don't think he exposes both of those things just to get rid of two subordinate officers that he could have trumped up any number of charges on if he really felt he had to get rid of them.
No, I would say I would posit the opposite position here and suggest that this shows where Russia is weak and who needs to be purged, who needs to be gotten rid of, right? When you have commanders who are turning tail or siding with Wagner or standing down despite having orders not to do so, that shows they can't be trusted. Those guys are gone. Those guys are gone faster than Prigozhin is. And if anything, this proves what Putin needs to do to make sure that his army is 100% foolproof, right? Because it does expose a massive weakness or series of weaknesses in the Russian military. All these things need to be dealt with, and we will see this being dealt with in the coming days and weeks.
Russia, so important updates 1 minute ago. Russia retains control over tactical nuclear weapons that will be deployed in Belarus. This is in line with international obligations. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on the air of the ONT television channel, "We were very concerned about the nuclear weapons of Belarus, and Russia claims they have these tactical nuclear weapons under control." Prigozhin's mercenaries leave Rostov-on-Don to the cries of leave Rostov. So they leave Rostov according to this.
Okay.
And they're stating Wagner. Guys, please, I'll say it. If you let me finish, please. Prigozhin, so Wagner in strength. That's according to SOTA. And then we've got TASS reporting in the work of the Telegram messenger in Russia. Failure continue according to the Down Detector portal. So this is just the latest update. Again, further de-escalation. People were saying earlier that we would not see a movement out of Rostov and just movement out of Wagner. So we see Wagner completely pulling out of everywhere, which is surprising to most, and very good news.
But, yeah.
Sorry, just as an update, Mario, what you read out about Wagner fighters in Rostov, I don't know whose mic's open, but it's echoing, leaving, that's true. But there's conflicting, and this is unverified at the moment, that Wagner troops are turning on Prigozhin and saying that this was a drive to Moscow and they will be going to Moscow regardless.
Who's saying that?
This is a Middle East Spectator. It's a Telegram channel who's been posting updates, so it's unverified at the moment.
I think there's just some pushback. I just don't think it's enough. If we look at the movement on the grounds, they are going back to their bases, but there's definitely going to be people that are not.
They're clearing out Rostov.
Ian, please.
I'm sorry, I've interrupted you like a million times today, Mario.
Okay, thanks, bro. But there's movement back to the bases.
To give Mario credit, he's a lot of patience. He's going for nearly 23 hours.
30, so over 30. But yeah, so Von, what do you make of this? What do we make of Wagner forces going back to their bases?
Mario, I need to share something. So this is from a Rush Brief Telegram channel, another Russian Telegram channel. It says from FightTux News, quote, source, the criminal case against Prigozhin will be dropped and PSC Wagner fighters will receive legal immunity.
Who said that? Sorry, read that again also slowly, please.
Yes, it is from Rush Brief, a Russian Telegram channel. They say a source of theirs claims, quote, the criminal case against Prigozhin will be dropped and the PMC Wagner fighters will receive legal immunity.
Who made that statement?
It's a Russian Telegram channel called the Rush Brief.
And how
again? That's so.
Just quickly, just want to verify how legitimate is that Telegram group? Because I know you know them well, also.
I mean, it appears. I mean, again, as anything.
Moldova, Libera, Moldova. Media. There's media reports as well that criminal cases have already been dropped from Prigozhin. This is
so that will be most likely as part of the negotiation. And another important aspect to take into consideration is remember some of what Prigozhin said, that no blood was dropped. So that's an important aspect, that even though this was a coup, they both sides ensured that there was never any kind of physical conflict. I know some helicopters were
7 Russian helicopters were shot down.
No human died, but also no human.
What do we mean no human died, Suleiman? Helicopters, 7 helicopters.
Humans flown by drones, perhaps AI.
Suleiman, people did.
KA-52.
Guys.
So when after the helicopters dropped, Mario, we had reports where he continued to say. So unless Prigozhin is lying,
he's probably of a.
Have you guys got actual report that someone's died though? No, that's a real question. I'm not trying to be sarcastic. Have we got an actual report that someone died?
I'm pretty certain he said his.
No. Even look, guys. Again, if we have 5-10 people died, it's really bad. But if you look at the number of deaths in the Ukraine war, this I would still say this is a coup. A coup generally has a lot more deaths. So no blood. I don't want to sit there pointing out about him lying, not lying, etc. At the end of the day, very little to no blood was spilled. I think this is what matters. But I think the impact this will have is I think positive. I hope it's going to be positive. And for me, what's positive is an end to the Ukraine war, finally. Now, how that and hopefully I could be completely wrong, but hopefully that's what we'll see. This is for me positive. But yeah, I want to go to Mickey and Von. You guys have been waiting patiently. Go ahead.
Von's been waiting for like 30 minutes here.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Von, Mickey, go ahead.
So, what was your question, Mario? I'm sorry, I heard it, but then I got sidetracked with everyone getting.
Prigozhin just got immunity as well as his forces. So what is, how long is that immunity going to last for? We know what Putin does to anyone that questions his authority. What would you expect him to do? How long will that mutiny last? Is that a legitimate, not mutiny, immunity? And how long? Yeah, what can Prigozhin? What options that Prigozhin has?
Breaking news from TASS here: in Voronezh, the restrictions on movement of vehicles has been lifted.
Wow, everything is just moving so quickly. This is mental.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is mental.
It's done. As I said earlier, Putin offered amnesty to anyone in Wagner who put down their arms. This negotiation is Prigozhin putting down his arms. Therefore, he's eligible for the amnesty. This will hold for the near term. I don't know midterm. I mean, he did commit treason, so eventually he'll probably get purged. But like I said, I expect to see. And everybody's talking about African coups here and there, but the one that people I think we should really focus on is the Turkish. Is a Turkish coup, and how Erdogan jumped at our opportunity to use it to his advantage to consolidate power. I expect Putin to do much the same. As Ian said, all the disloyals outed themselves as disloyal. Expect them to be purged. anyone who was hesitant to immediately side with the government, I expect to see viewed with great suspicion going forward, to say the least. This is bad for Russians. This is probably really bad for Ukraine too, because this is potentially where we see this consolidation lead to basically a much more hardline approach, because Gerasimov and Shoigu were two of the major roadblocks of that. So it's going to be very interesting to see who replaces them at the helm. It's going to be very interesting if it's Surovikin, because General Armageddon didn't earn that name for no reason. So that's my take on this. Also, for what you said, all source, yes, people are moving the goalposts. People on both sides, on all sides, do that. But let's be honest: if you're not adapting your argument and your perspective to as you gain a new information, then you are not thinking analytically. And I don't understand what the point is if you're not being analytical to that degree.
No, look, I just remember. I'm just saying this, and I'm going to say it again.
Oh, by you, I don't mean you personally. I just want to be
clear. I know, but I think because I want to agree with you on something that I think is very important, and this is where we cannot just. This is something that Patrick has said, and I think we need to highlight importantly. If Prigozhin managed to get, and it looks like it's all coming to fruition. It looks like it's all getting to fruition. If Prigozhin, through his actions, which were clearly, as I think we all agree, was an armed insurrection / coup, armed rebellion, or whatever, new mutiny or whatever, managed to, 1, gain immunity for him and his force. 2, get Wagner now to be incorporated with legal protection under the Russian MOD. 3, managed to get Gerasimov and Shoigu fired. If you're Putin, you, as Patrick said, and I think everybody said here, importantly, he is forced to consolidate power because right now Prigozhin has the weapons. He has the power. He has demonstrated by his action that he is the most influential player right now in Russia. He achieved his overall objective by threatening to go into Moscow. Nobody's disputing that he was marching towards Moscow. He was going to Moscow. When he achieved his objective, he consolidated and pushed back. I'm sorry, but this idea that Putin somehow now thinks that he somehow consolidated power, I just can't see how anybody can look at Putin and say, you're clearly the most powerful man in Russia, when you have Prigozhin, who through military force managed to do that. And that's been my argument. This is a challenge to Putin's regime because Shoigu and Gerasimov were part of the Putin regime.
You're underestimating him.
But on the flip side, it's not that he has to take the opportunity. This is an opportunity to consolidate power. Take it. But on the other hand, it's weird to look. He didn't achieve this by military force. He moved the column up to Moscow and then accepted amnesty and negotiated. We got to take all the factors into account here. This isn't some I drove tanks into Moscow and shot people. This isn't. Yes, it's a challenge to his power, but not to the extent that people think. You got to look at these things a bit more balancedly, because he accepted the amnesty. It was negotiated, and an attempted coup that ended with single-digit bloodshed, because there's pedants who are going to call me on that, and negotiation, and that's a sign of weakness. You guys are insane.
No, but Vaughn, okay, first of all, this is the greatest loss of life for the Russian Air Force since the beginning of the invasion, number one. Number two, though, that I think is very important to highlight, that we need to admit, we are assuming right now that generals within the Ministry of Defense will willy-nilly accept this. Let's say, Ian, you're right, that Gerasimov and Shoigu have enormous political power that Putin cannot fire them on their own, and now they've just been released. Then what is the effect on the Russian military chain of command where a private military corporation can dictate who is in power within the Russian Ministry of Defense? This might be over in this time frame right now, but you have to analyze the second and third order effects. Ideally for Putin, everything just settles, the dust settles, everything goes away. But if I'm Surovikin, if I'm a Russian general currently in Ukraine, and Prigozhin comes up to me and says, you will do this, you will execute this operation, does that Russian general has the balls basically to say, no, I'm not going to do that because of X, Y, and Z? This is a complete, this is the textbook example of degradation of mission command and control, and firing your Minister of Defense and chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff during an active war is, one, terrible in of itself, and two, the down effects across the chain of command will be felt. I think that now this is clearly, I'm speculating, but just to say this is done, let's shake our hands and everything is hunky-dory for Russia. After everything we just saw in the last 12 to 24 hours, we need to continue to analyze the effects of the Russian military going forward on this.
Also, can I ask you a question? So obviously I've been following this and you've been following it. So you said, I'm really glad this is the outcome at the moment. But you said Prigozhin wanted to show Putin that he has all the power. Mission accomplished. He's done that and now he's retreated. For what? So why would you make an enemy of somebody like Putin just to show him you have the power and then retreat and think it's all fine? What was the purpose of this? Surely this whole exercise over the last 24 hours was not just to show Putin from a distance. Because do you think Putin's not going to take measures now to do damage limitation, to protect and you know?
I agree with you, Khaleesi, 100%.
So then what's the point? No, what I'm asking is, I'm not being confrontational, but I'm just brainstorming with you. What was the point of this? Surely it just wasn't to show the power. There must have been, I'm still trying to figure it out myself. What was the purpose of this? Why did you do it?
Because I think Prigozhin, so this is the question that we need to analyze also, right? And I want to push it on to other speakers. I don't want to hog the space. Is that now Prigozhin can now claim that he has been framing for months now about the incompetency of the Russian Ministry of Defense. He has made it his effort that his enemies are Shoigu and Gerasimov. Through his Telegram channels and posts, he has not been able to achieve those objectives. He just was not successful. So he used this force. Now, what I think there might be some backstory to this, right? And I think where this kind of ties into is that Shoigu, let's not forget, attempted to consolidate power under the Russian PMCs and force them to sign them as part of Russian Ministry of Defense, right? This has been a push of the Russian Ministry of Defense consistently to have Wagner subordinate to the Russian Ministry of Defense. Prigozhin has been fighting vigorously against that and trying to maintain his independence as a mercenary group. He has now achieved that through these negotiations. He has now achieved that he is undisputably one of the most powerful figures in Russian military and political aspects in Russia today. He has demonstrated it with, as he claims, with not significant amount of bloodshed. Yes, the Russian Air Force has suffered an enormous amount of losses, but that can. But now Prigozhin says, now I have legal protection for Wagner. But to your point, Khaleesi, Putin is not done. If Putin is willing to poison and kill dissidents across the world for defecting, he is clearly
I agree. I agree also. I agree with you. This isn't over. And what you just said there, maybe it was actually to enforce what his role in all of this is, and it's not subordinates. And maybe that's what it is. He's shown it, but I just think it was crazy.
Another thing you have to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is that meeting that Prigozhin had with Putin. He obviously looked him in the eye and he says, "I am not afraid." This movement that he'd had is nothing but a challenge.
Were you there?
Listen, there's no way you have a meeting with a guy and then 3 days later you challenge him. You go and you take his fruit cup and you say, "I don't think you're going to do shit. I'm going to come to Moscow and I'm going to make you fire the people I don't like. And there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it." You know, to Vaughn's point, I understand the change of assessment, but let's look and document the change of assessment so far. In the beginning, it was like, this is not happening, it's a psyop. Then this is happening, but it's not a big deal. Then this is happening, but it's not a coup. It's just it's some kind of rebellion. Okay, it's a coup, but it's not a big deal. Now it's okay. It's a coup. It's a big deal, but actually it was Putin's design the entire time, and he's absolutely in charge. Pretty soon, what's going to happen is this is Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton's fault. I think I think all source is absolutely correct, and Piotr is absolutely correct. We are now starting to see the emergence of a multipolar Russia. And if you are China or if you are allied with Russia, you're starting to have question marks on who's actually in control. This is the first time it's ever happened. Nobody ever. We can all agree that Putin, in his pomp, this does not happen. But everybody goes into decline. Every boxer goes into decline. Every leader goes into decline. This is when you watch Putin's speech, it was sort of like a little bit wishy-washy in a sense, right? It wasn't as strong as a historical Putin piece. Putin, in his pomp, if somebody marches an army from Rostov to Moscow. Putin in his pomp kills them all, emerges as a Russian hero, and basically gives them zero tolerance. Now he's giving them amnesty. Every military leader is going like, huh, interesting.
But Mickey, that's assuming that
my
Prigozhin
ability
doesn't fall out of a window. I mean, I'm just being honest with you.
Let me say, Danish, I understand that, but like Prigozhin has made the calculation that he's not going to. I agree with you. There's nobody who's challenged Putin politically who is alive today. Nobody. So if Evgeny Prigozhin survives,
funny you should say that.
if he
I'm just going to interrupt you one
then
second.
that is
Yeah, I have
every
an
moment
update.
that he is alive is a.
Just sorry, Mickey, I just muted you. Just Khaleesi's got an update, then I'll go straight.
Yeah, and it kind of adds to Mickey's point. Statements coming out, anti-terrorism committee, cases of provocative messages with calls to participate in protests are recorded. These actions are criminal. Measures will be taken, and that's from the National Anti-Terrorism Committee in Russia. So kind of
if you guys don't think that the Russian military or the intelligence agencies are monitoring all of social media, you're mistaken. All of these accounts, all of these Telegram accounts that were pro-Wagner and calling for Putin to be decapitated, they're done. They're finished.
They know,
All right,
but
I think
they
this
know
was
that
a
they're
good
being
coverage
monitored,
of
and
the
a lot of
event.
people believe that
Now
the
they're starting
FSB
repeating
was
themselves,
upset
so
at
I'm
the
going
invasion
to
of
end it.
Ukraine from the very beginning, and a
I'll
lot
put
of
this
people
up on
in Russia
YouTube
believe that the FSB
just
backed
for
Prigozhin in
historical
some way, shape, or
purposes,
form. They would not
and for
have
anyone who
had
wants
this march
to
on Moscow
dive
if
into
they did not
this.
feel they had
Thanks for
backed
tuning in.
Prigozhin.